Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for spending some time with me today. I've been gone for a week. I've been practicing for the BFL on Guntersville and finished up the tournament yesterday. I had 12 pounds, 5 ounces. It took 13 pounds, 3 ounces to make a check. I was right there. Just one or two little things could have made all the difference in the world. And we're going to talk about that today. So I really appreciate you liking, commenting, subscribing. I'm going to tell you what's working right now on Lake Guntersville and explain to you outside grass line, inside grass line, what the fish are doing now, because this has changed completely from 2 or 3 years ago. They seem like they're spawning a way that I've never really ever seen them do before, because the grass is changing. We're getting this new type of grass, rock star grass, whatever you want to call it. It's a hybrid of eelgrass, and it's growing everywhere in Lake Guntersville. So I'm going to give you the full rundown on all that. Thank you guys again for watching. I really appreciate it. So I caught my fish on 2 baits yesterday. This is a woolly hog craw by Yum. Not a sponsor, just a bait that I've been flipping for the last 10 years, it seems, and maybe longer than that. Maybe, I think 2011 was when I first started using this. And this is what I use to catch my spawning bass. This is a 3/8 ounce sinker. Anytime I'm flipping for spawning fish, I like that 3/8. It keeps that bait in their bed, and then if you're fishing around any type of grass or anything like that, it's going to get through down to them. You know, if you're fishing like a 1/4 ounce or a 3/16, a lot of times you're not going to be able to keep that bait in the bed. So it's very important. Like if you're fishing reeds or something, you know those fish are spawning around the reeds, cattails, things like that. A 5/16 is really important. But since I was fishing that submergent stargrass, I really felt like a little heavier weight. 3/8, I know it was going to stay in their bed. And this is what we do down in Florida. You flip it, you let it sit there for a few seconds. What's going to happen most of the time on spawning fish, they're going to swim away, then they're going to swim back. You've left it in there long enough for them to come back to it. Then you shake it a little bit, gets their attention. Next thing you know, they're biting and you're catching them. So this is what I did for a lot of the day, was to flip this in beds around stargrass. Unfortunately, I couldn't see the fish. I know they were spawning because you could see the beds, but I was just pitching to those light sandy spots around a bunch of grass. Pretty easy to see despite all the wind dingying up the water. You could still see the beds. You couldn't see the fish. They could really blend in well with that dingier water, but you could see the bed. So I started in a bedding fish area. I just wanted to get a couple keepers. My game plan was to throw a big 5, 6, 7 inch swim bait most of the day, and then flip docks with a big jig. Now, neither of those worked. I didn't catch anything on a swim bait or a jig, but I did get a few keepers in the boat early, and then I went to doing my swim bait and my jig flipping thing. And it was one of those deals where in practice I was just kind of led down the wrong road. I thought a big jig was going to be my best bet at one of those giant post-spawn females that was setting up on a dock. Just never happened. I caught my biggest fish I've probably caught in the last 2 or 3 years on Guntersville in practice, flipping a big 5/8 ounce jig. And I don't know what happened. I ran my best stretches of docks and it just didn't happen. But I think it's very important in the post-spawn is when something that you thought was going on doesn't seem like it's working, you need to bail on it quickly. So I got out of that. I went back to my flipping. And what I've seen on Guntersville the last 10 years living here is you can pick up a Cinco, if it's a wacky rig or Texas style, and go to the primrose, go to shallow areas where there's a little bit of floating grass, you know, that's stuck to the bottom, not the chopped up eelgrass, but like primrose, gator grass, and typically backs of pockets, little, you know, creek arms and stuff like that. And you can go in there and there's typically keeper bass and you can throw a Cinco to them and catch them. That was not the case at all yesterday. I did that for probably an hour and never had a bite on it. And what I'm realizing is those fish are spawning out a little bit deeper in that stargrass. So I've seen this on Okeechobee where you will have a, you know, really any Florida lake where you will have a bunch of fish spawn like January, December in the real shallow, you know, reeds, lily pads, stuff like that. And then like later in the year, March, April, you'll see bass spawning out deeper in the eelgrass. And I guess they just need the water to stay warmer longer. They're, you know, a little more less likely to be pushed off by a cold front or something. They're spawning later out in that deeper grass. And that's what we're having here on Guntersville. I don't think it's a time of the year thing. I think it's more of a fishing pressure thing. They know if they get real shallow on the bank, they're going to get caught, and they just have a haven out in that deeper grass. So they're spawning out in like 4-5 feet of water in clumps, you know, little holes around big clumps of that rock star grass. So that was my deal. And I had the bites to make a check doing that, but I was losing them like crazy. So I usually flip a straight shank flipping hook. And I've done videos on this in the past. I like a straight shank flipping hook, but I also do like a EWG super line hook. So this is a 4/0. I switched to this after losing a couple fish. And here's the deal with the EWG. There are times where a bass is going to eat it. You know, maybe your line is going like this and they swim kind of towards you, but that line gets wrapped around the grass. And when you reel down, you're feeling pressure on your, you know, you can feel the pressure from the fish, but it's not actually the fish. It's the line like wrapped around the grass. For whatever reason, you go to set the hook and, you know, you're not giving enough hook to the fish, I guess. When you use an EWG, sometimes you get these hook sets where you just don't get a whole lot of the fish. You kind of slack line hook set. That EWG just puts it right in the corner of their mouth, the side of their mouth, really. And it's some of the most amazing hook sets. I mean, you got to get pliers to get it out. So I wish I would have went to the EWG earlier. I think for bedding fish from now on, it's going to be an EWG for me. I just think that helps a lot. So caught a couple fish doing that, lost a lot of fish doing that. And then my other deal was a green pumpkin chatterbait. We had post frontal, not a cloud in the sky, sunny days, and that green pumpkin trailer with a green pumpkin skirt, green pumpkin blade, just about as subtle and as natural as I think I can make a chatterbait. That was the goal with that, and I caught 2 of my better fish doing that at the end of the day. I ran a bunch of spots. Guntersville is covered up. You are going to have a lot of people fishing your areas, and it's really hard to get on a spot. I ran to an old point that I've caught a bunch of fish on. Haven't caught anything good there in a couple years, but there were some big pre-spawn and post-spawn fish staging there. So I caught one. If you look at the thumbnail, one of the fish is a beautiful pre-spawn fish. It weighed close to 4 pounds. And then you had another one that was like 2 or 3 inches longer and weighed less than 3 pounds. So those are my 2 good bites of the day. Again, I missed a check by a little under a pound. And I will say this, I'm not going to gripe about the forward-facing sonar thing, but I do feel like we are at a time now where it's hard to make a check if you don't really crush them. And I felt like I fished a pretty good derby. You know, we had 20-mile-per-hour winds every day in practice. Whole half of the lake was pretty much unfishable. Definitely unfishable in practice, but it really muddied up one half of the lake. So we were condensed. The places where we found fish, you know, everyone had been hammering those. You know, when you have really strong winds for days, it's going to condense all the fishermen into little areas. So those little areas, the fish were just getting pounded. Well, that's where we knew to go fish. So we went to those areas to fish really highly pressured fish. So thankfully, I have a lot of prior history and knowledge of this lake, so I could run around and run some new water. But again, April on Guntersville on a Saturday when the weather's nice, you're going to have 100,000 fishermen out there. So the lake was covered up. It was really hard to get on it. But my point being with the forward-facing sonar thing, it seems like if you don't have it, you know, I would have loved to be using perspective mode when I was fishing for those bedfish. That would have made that happen a lot easier, quicker. I would have known if there was a fish there or not just blind flipping. I really would have known. And then, you know, a lot of the day was wasted not catching anything. You could have been out scoping. I was fishing in the area, throwing a Cinco, just trying to catch a keeper, and I look out in the middle of the lake, and there's a guy with, you know, 6-pound test and a spinning rod catching them. So it's one of those deals where, man, I feel like I'm playing basketball on a 10-foot hoop, and these guys with forward-facing sonar are playing on a kiddie hoop at times. It just really seems like that to me, and I feel like 5 years ago, 12-6 with the conditions and everything that went down this week, it would have been a paycheck. You know, it would have been easily inside the top 20, and that just didn't happen. So whatever you want to, however you want to look at that, I'm not going to gripe about it any longer. But that was my day. I felt like I kind of figured something out. You've got to run a lot of places in the post spawn. You want to keep yourself in a small area. I think that's very important. You don't want to use the whole lake because timing is the most important thing in the post spawn. So you want to be able to be on the stretches that have fish when they start biting, and when they bite, it's going to go off. You're going to catch them really good, but that is a small window of time. So if you are running all over the lake, there's a good chance that you may be running in that 15-minute window where they bite, and that may be the only 15-minute window all day where they bite. So very important to keep yourself in a small area and then continuously moving around until you get on a place that has fish and the bite window goes down. So that's my best post-spawn advice. Thank you guys for watching. Super tough tournament. We had post frontal, and you had a mix of fish in the pre-spawn, the post-spawn, and the spawn, and there wasn't one thing that seemed like it was any better than anything else. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the water.